So, bro, what's up?
Well, Allison, I've got 3 things and then maybe one fun facts. They're kind of 2 facts. But anyways, it's fun nonetheless. Let's start with number 1. Party like it's 1987. Again. Well, it's been quite a year for the stock market. So going through the year, the performance in January was the best January since 1987. Then came February, as it always does after January. And those are the best first 2 months of the year since 1991. Then came March. Put those 3 together, you get the first quarter. We had the best first quarter since 1998. Well, now we're done with April, a month that saw the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ hit all-time highs. So look at those first 4 months, and we have the best performance since we're back to 1987. In fact, Ryan Detrick of LPL told CNBC that there have only been 4 years since World War II that had better performances in those first 4 months. They were 1967, 75, 83, and 87. And for 3 of those years, the performance of the subsequent 6 months was about flat. The one outlier was 1987. The market was down 13%, thanks mostly to what became known as Black Monday, that day in October when the Dow dropped 22.6%. But still, the market was up for that year. So let's put some other numbers on what we have seen so far in 2019. The S&P 500 is up 18% so far this year. The NASDAQ is up 22%. This is all, by the way, as of the end of April. So the NASDAQ being up more shows that bigger, techier, growthier stocks are still doing very well, outperforming the market. Small caps are doing well, but not quite as well, up 16%. International stocks up 14%. And boring old bonds up 3%. Not great compared to stocks, but still pretty good for 4 months worth of work. So all in all, 2019 has been a great year to be an investor so far.
See, there we go. There he is. There's my awfulizer.
Thank you. Well, let's get to some more awfulizing then, shall we? Number 2, the secret to getting ahead, be born at the right time. So a lot of financial success does come down to luck or, in some cases, bad luck. So for example, research has established for a while now that entering the workforce as a college grad during a time of recession can have lasting effects that last up to 10 to 15 years. But do those effects last longer? And what if you didn't graduate from college? Well, a couple of researchers looked at these questions, Hannes Schwant of Stanford and Till van Wachter of the University of California. So the results are pretty depressing. And I'm just going to quote from their research specifically. So they found that, quote, negative impacts on socioeconomic outcomes persist in the long run. In midlife, recession graduates earned less while working more, and they were less likely to be married and more likely to be childless. And then on top of it, and again, this is a quote from the research, recession graduates had higher death rates when they reached middle age. These mortality increases stemmed mainly from diseases linked to unhealthy behaviors such as smoking, drinking, and eating poorly. In particular, we discovered a significantly higher risk of death from drug overdoses and other so-called deaths of despair among those who left school during a downturn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to everybody. And if you enter the workforce during a recession, it doesn't mean you're doomed. So, for example, my wife and I graduated from college at the end of the 90-91 recession. We turned out all right, although my wife did have to start training as a UPS driver because it was the only job that was available to her.
Wow, you could not pay me enough to drive a big truck around D.C.
She eventually did not finishing it because she got another job. Regardless, so you're not doomed. But it does explain a couple things. So first of all, I think it partially explains why many millennials, particularly the older millennials, feel a lot of angst because they came of age either during or after the Great Recession and had more college debt than any previous generation. But another thing is it validates something we've talked about before on the show, and that there is a connection between health and wealth, and it's a two-way street, where if you're experiencing some sort of financial distress, it can lead to basically bad behaviors. So just something to keep in mind. Number 3, purple pain. This past April 21st marked the 3rd anniversary of the death of Prince Rogers Nelson, better known as just Prince. Although apparently when he was young, he didn't like that name. Do you know what he went by when he was a kid? Skipper. Who would have known? And Prince was his name. His father's stage name was Prince Rogers. And he passed it along to his son. Anyway, as reported by USA Today, despite 3 years transpiring since Prince's expiring, his estate is still not settled.
Wow.
Why not? A few reasons. Well, first of all, he didn't have a will or an estate plan, and that will always cause delays, confusion, and problems, but especially when, as in Prince's case, number one, you don't have any kids, and number two, you're very, very rich. So after he died, up to 700 people came out of the woodwork claiming to either be forgotten descendants, like half-siblings, or one guy claimed that he was Prince's long-lost son.
Wow.
Yes. Eventually, it was whittled down to his 6 siblings. Now, the estate is estimated to be worth $200 million and $300 million, but we don't know for sure yet because it hasn't been officially valued yet, 3 years later, by the administrators. But we do know that it's a lot less than it was 3 years ago because the heirs claim that the administrators of the estate have already spent $45 million on legal fees and other expenses. And it's going to go down even more because the estate still hasn't paid the federal estate taxes and the Minnesota state estate taxes, which is going to cost the heirs tens of millions of dollars. And the final complication here is that obviously the state is an ongoing business, right? Because they still have to manage his recordings as well as Paisley Park, which is now a museum. So it can't be, it's not like a normal estate where everyone gets a little bit of something and goes their separate ways. It's an ongoing business, so the heirs have been kind of fighting it out. But the lesson, of course, here is, had he an estate plan, it would have saved his heirs a lot of time, a lot of money. If you don't have an estate plan, go ahead and get one. Final fun fact, are you in the middle class?
Yes.
See, that's what most Americans think they're in the middle class.
Yeah.
In fact, 70% of people think they're in the middle class. But a recent article from Fast Company...
Which, depending on how big a middle it is,
Well, so
they could be
it.
right. It could be
70%
middle and 15% upper and low. I mean, the math works out. It works out.
It works out. Okay, well, I'll give you, at least according to this Fast Company article, some definitions of the middle class.
Okay.
So according to the Pew Research Center, which came out with a report towards the end of 2018, a middle-income family with 3 people in the household earns between $45,200 and $135,600.
Okay.
The Brookings Institute offered a broader range, $37,000 to $147,000. But a lot of it depends on the size of your household and where you live. So to see how you stack up to other households in the U.S. as well as other households in your state or even in your general area like your county, you can visit the income calculator at pewresearch.org. And that, Allison, is what's up.